depending on where you are joining us from today. My name is Brenna Goggin, and I am River Network's Mid-Atlantic Leadership Development Manager. I am joined today by my two colleagues, April Engel, Science and Policy Manager with River Network, and Colleen Walters, Delaware River Basin Program Manager. And we are pleased to host our third coffee lunch roundtable specific to COVID-19 questions or issues that have come up. Today, we are focused on cybersecurity during COVID-19. As many of you have probably experienced, folks have been looking at working remotely and not coming into an office setting, which has raised a lot of questions or concerns around security issues for those that are new to this transition. So we wanted to make sure that we hosted a roundtable to allow for questions and opportunities for you guys to learn more about how you can provide cybersecurity during this time. So we are joined today by Tim Walters, Director of Sales and Operations, and Trevor Pyle, Lead Security Analyst for Sabre On Point. And they will be giving us a presentation on all things related to cybersecurity during this time. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to them to get started.
Awesome. Thanks, Brenna. Really appreciate it. Thanks to River Network and everybody on the call today. We're very happy to be here and speak to you guys about cybersecurity. I think we have a good lineup today, but really this and actually I should have made it lunch roundtable, so I'm apologizing about that. It's not a coffee roundtable, but you can have coffee or lunch, whatever you want to have during this time here. But the point being is that, you know, this call is for you and to provide some resources for you in the audience there. So if you do have questions, we will be addressing the questions via the chat, and we're happy to address them. So yes, we have slides put together, but we are happy to get into any other details on concerns, recommendations, risks right now that you are worried about. So we will get started here. This is just to show you the agenda for today, but we'll go through a little bit about myself and Trevor, cybersecurity, and then get into the current risks that are, yes, they're during COVID-19 right now, but we truly feel that that this is going to be it's going to be ongoing for a while now, and these are recommendations that we believe you can put in place to make sure that you're set up working remotely, securely. You can collaborate securely, and you're set up to do it for a long time. So that's what we'll go through today, and then we'll answer any other questions that that anybody might have during the meeting and or after the meeting. So with that being said, it will help us address the audience a little better if we could take a poll of the audience. So Colleen, if you could launch the poll so we can get a good idea of everyone's current knowledge of cybersecurity, I think that would help us go forward here.
Sure, so everyone should see the poll on their screen. And so the question is, how well do you understand cybersecurity? And the responses are, I'm an expert, I feel somewhat comfortable with cybersecurity, I know what cybersecurity means, but that's it, and this is a whole new world for me. So I'll just wait a couple more seconds for everyone to get their votes in. Okay, so it looks like we are at 75% right now, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results. So it looks like 50% of the folks joining feel somewhat comfortable with cybersecurity, and then the rest is split between I'm an expert, I know what cybersecurity means, but that's it, and this is a whole new world for me.
Awesome. No, that's great. And I clicked I'm an expert, so I hope I didn't sway those options there, but that's perfect. So as Trevor laughs, so we it looks like we have a good mix of the group then. So we have folks who it's very new and then folks who are somewhat knowledgeable about cyber. So let me go to the next slide here. Perfect. So very quickly, and then I'll pass it over to Trevor to introduce himself. But this is Tim Walters speaking. As Brenna mentioned, Director of Sales and Operations for Sabre On Point. Sabre On Point is the commercial division of Sabre Systems. We are a IT services company. We provide software development and cybersecurity services, both to the federal government and the commercial sector as well. I've had close to 10 years of experience in the IT security space at this point. Trevor, very happy to have you on today, and thanks for joining. If you could quickly introduce yourself, it'd be great.
Thanks, Tim, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone, wherever you're zooming in from. So thanks, everyone, for joining. Yes, I supporting Tim here, Sabre On Point, and as the slide there says, the cyber analyst technical lead, went to Lebanon Valley College, have an MBA, and then also a Bachelor of Cybersecurity and CISSP cybersecurity certification and some other certifications. So looking forward to sharing some knowledge today, and hope everybody gets some good value out of the call. And please, like Tim said earlier, please feel free to in the chat, please feel free to type anything, and hopefully we can help everyone out.
Awesome. Thanks, Trevor. All right, great. So this is where we'll start. We're going to start with just some foundation of cybersecurity and why it's important. Our intention is not to scare you. I think a lot of cybersecurity presentations scare the audience into like a doomsday scenario. It's not why we're here. We want to talk to you about why it should be taken in, as an important aspect of your business, and things to think about, and some quick and easy steps that you can take to make sure that you're set up correctly. So, what is cybersecurity? You can obviously see on the screen here the definition. To the non-technical folks out there, this is my favorite way to describe cybersecurity, and I think it will help hit home. It is anything that is connected to the internet. You are protecting that, right? So these days at your organization, whether you're working from home or you're working, eventually get back to the office, what is connected to the internet and how are you protecting it, right? So you have computers, laptops, you have servers, the Wi-Fi network, obviously, you have mobile devices, you have printers, scanners. That's where the Internet of Things come into play as well. So anything that's connected to the internet can be breached, and that's what cybersecurity is. So you're protecting those devices at your organization and personally from the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And so the reason you're protecting those three items there is confidentiality is, depending on what your organization does, you're protecting your consumers, your customers, your donors. You're protecting their information and your information that you're working with on a daily basis. Integrity is your good name, right? So as you probably have heard, there's plenty of large organizations that get breached and it damages their name. Yes, they still recover, but it costs them millions of dollars to recover. But at the same time, then you think twice about maybe opening up a Target credit card, or you think twice about going to some of those large organizations that have been hit, because unfortunately, it damages the name, right? And so that's what we're trying to protect, because it does happen, and it's, I'm sure there were things that they should have put in place that would have protected it, but and that's kind of the point of cybersecurity. And then availability is making sure that it's up and running. So a lot of cyber attacks are going to bring down your network, and in fact impacting your business, which is you not being up and running and available to work. So we just wanted to give you a really basic definition of cybersecurity. And so that's what we're here to talk to you about today, and how you can start protecting the devices that are connected to the internet. So why is it important? These are your scary stats. There's a lot of scary stats out there. You could Google cybersecurity statistics for 2020 and get hundreds or thousands of them, right? But we picked out a couple of really what we felt were really important to share with you today to talk about. So data breaches exposed 15 billion records in 2019. The folks on the call, whatever organization you're with or your mission, you just don't want those records exposed, right? And that's 15 billion that's a lot of records exposed, right? So you're protecting against like I mentioned, your donor information and or any confidential information that you're collecting on a daily basis and or putting into your environment, right? You're protecting from the cyber hackers that want to get in and they want to bring down your network and or they want to bring down your customers, your donors' information. That's who they're after. And then the other one that I wanted to talk to you about, so you can obviously see the stats here, but this 90% of cybersecurity attacks begin with a phishing email. So for folks on the call who are not familiar with cybersecurity, a phishing email is a fake email, right? So we've all got them. You've probably gotten fake phone calls as well, right? But for this case, we'll talk about phishing emails. What it is it's an email that's going to come from what looks like a reputable and or relevant person. So it's either going to, maybe it comes from your CEO or your executive director, or maybe it comes from a friend or someone you work closely with on a daily basis. That's how attackers are getting in right now. It's those phishing emails. So it may say this email is coming from Trevor Pyle, but if you look at the email address, it's scrambled letters at scrambledletters.com or .net, right? So it's not the actual Trevor Pyle that's trying to send me an email. It's a phishing email. So there are a couple different things, and I'm sure Trevor can probably get into some more of those as well when he gets into this. But there are a couple of things in the body of an email that you absolutely should be looking for. So just make sure that sender, it says their name, but then kind of take a look at what the actual email address looks like in parentheses there, and does it match up with the one that you're expecting it from? And then, like I mentioned, this is the way they're getting in now. So in the past, it was very sophisticated code that hackers were writing to get into their network, and there's movies and TV shows about it and things like that. But truly, right now, today, the way they're getting in is through those emails. And then what happens is, if you do click on that email, you do open that link. Don't even open the link, right? To see if it's something you should be opening. Then they're embedding malware. They're embedding what's called ransomware onto your network, and that's how they get in. So be aware of phishing emails. I think that's a pretty powerful stat. That 90% of all those attacks are beginning with a phishing email. So there are many things you can do as an organization, which we'll talk about later, to help prevent phishing emails and or be aware of phishing emails. So and then why is it important to nonprofits? A lot of reasons. Now, these are two of the very specific reasons, or the two that we wanted to talk about today. But the most common thing that I hear when meeting with our customers or our prospects out in the field is, well, we're small. A hacker is not going to want to come after us. Why would they come after us? Or a small nonprofit, we're doing good work. Why would they want to hack us? We don't have any money for an IT budget anyway, things like that, right? We hear that all the time. We can't afford to keep staff, right? We're all volunteers, things like that, right? So yes, you are correct. They might not be looking to go after that individual organization. What they're looking to go after is your contacts, your donor information, your customers, the organizations that you do work with. That's who they want to try and come after, right? So if you have a large donor or a very specific donor that's a large organization or a person of high net worth, that's who they want to come after. And if they see that you're, you know, that you're their favorite charity, or you know, you're on a list of their charities on their website, right? They will try to come after you and find a way to get into that organization. So those are the things that we wanted to make you aware of, and kind of put on your radar as, yes, they might not be coming after you, but then you're at that point, then you're worried about your integrity and your confidentiality that's getting breached when that does occur. So Trevor, why don't you take? I will stop talking here. Why don't you take this this slide here?
Yeah. So again, to Tim's point, we'll just talk statistics since, you know, we wanted to talk about COVID-19. So also, not only have Tim said that 90% of attacks start with phishing, or 90% of cybersecurity attacks start with phishing, have actually even increased since COVID-19. So a lot of with everybody, a lot of people working from home, that the people that do have that availability, unfortunately, cyber attackers have noticed that. So they've actually been starting to send more phishing attacks. So as it says on the slide, they've increased 667%. So that's an astronomical number. And unfortunately, it continues to increase, and continue to monitor that. So the other kind of statistic is that the amount of cybercrime has quadrupled just in the past few months as well. So not only are attackers looking to use phishing and increase that, they've actually gotten successful in that too, with the report of the quadruple. So quadruple of reports. So how does that impact nonprofits? So it, again, to the phishing theme, it's just going to continue. And then also, in the case of a nonprofit with remote work, if you guys are able to do that, and then the limited resources. So depending on how your organization was and what, you know, any type of IT support you had, they may not still be there and be able to assist as much. So I think that was about it. Tim, if you could go to the next slide, please.
And just before we move on from phishing, from the phishing conversations, we do have some comments in the chat. So Emily wants to know if you can be attacked by malware just by opening the email.
So just by, usually I don't want to say always, but if you just get the general email from, as Tim's example, a whole bunch of texts, I would say no, because more than likely all you did was just click on the general email and that information. So if you didn't click on any links or you didn't do anything like that, it shouldn't be reaching out. So what happens is, from a more technical standpoint, is you would click on that link or that attachment in the case of a malicious attachment, and the code would run, or it would call out to the bad guy's website, and then it would infect your computer. So I hope that explained that, Emily. And I do see another question. I've also seen or heard of examples where they pose as CEOs. That's correct, yes. So April's question, that is very true. So that's people will pose as CEOs, pose as CFOs, whatever it may be. So that's a really big issue that they call business email compromise. So somebody would actually, in the case of business email, they would get in the middle, or they could even get in the middle of that conversation, and they could say, "Hey, please wire me this money. You know, we need this by the end of day today, 13. Please send it ASAP." So yes, that is true. That's an impersonation example. So one great defense is if you know the CEO of the company, depending on where your role is in the company, if the CEO could go one of two ways, right? If the CEO has probably never emailed you, and all of a sudden he or she emails you out of the clear blue and is asking you, that's probably a suspicious sign that it probably really isn't the CEO. So that's one example. The other thing, then one of the key thing is to actually look at the sender. And so if it says it's from John Smith, you know, you can click down and see if it really is from John Smith at company.com. If it's not John Smith, and it doesn't say John Smith at company.com, I wouldn't do anything more. If you're still, you know, concerned, call, if it is a CEO, call the CEO and say, did you send me this email? Do you really need this money? That's one of the defenses too. And then the other thing is, like I said, just call the individual, reach out and say, do you really need this money? Before I send or do anything, I want to make sure this is legit and this is you. If they say no, then probably all bets are off and you shouldn't proceed.
Yeah, that's super helpful. Thanks, Trevor.
Yeah.
And we have another question from Deanna. To what
Yes.
extent does using a third-party provider on your website to process credit card payments, like IATS payment, protect your donor data?
So we will be talking specifically about donor pages. I could answer it now. Maybe probably best when we get to that slide. I think we should have enough time. So we will direct one of the key areas that we'll talk about is donor pages and fundraising.
Yeah, agreed. Let's that's a great question. We can talk about that when we get to those slides there. Perfect.
So if we could go
ahead
to the next one.
All right. Did you guys ask this question? I got kicked off.
We did not, Tim.
Okay.
I answered a question from April and Emily.
Okay, great. So we wanted to pause here and ask if there are cybersecurity concerns at your organization that you haven't put into the chat yet. Maybe the folks that ask those questions, these are their cybersecurity concerns. But if there's anybody else out there that would like to throw a question into the chat, we can address it now.
All right, we have some coming in. So from April, how do I make sure my antivirus and malware on my computer is sufficient and working right?
Yep.
So without getting into the saying one vendor is better than the other, I'll just say, make a fair statement and say something is better than nothing. So my guess is that a lot of people, because of so many Windows computers and most of the time, if you just have the computer that the brand new Microsoft Windows 10 computer that you got, it comes with Microsoft Defender that's built in. Usually, you can go in and look at the settings. Microsoft usually has recommended settings. Depending on the vendor, they'll have recommended settings. The only thing I would recommend is making sure that they're updated frequently. So that's one thing is check the frequency of it. I know it's sometimes depending on your computer, when you update it frequently, it maybe lags your computer, but the way it works is most computers is that the software there that's to stop it, it will update what they call signatures. So the bad guys, it will update the bad guys' signatures. So then what happens is when the bad guys, or you go to a bad guy site, that signature will be updated and it would stop the traffic or prevent your computer. So I hope that answered the question.
Great.
That's probably the best, just make sure you're updating it frequently. And a lot of the times that, like I said, without getting into specific vendors, A is better than B. Just make sure you have it and are updating it.
Okay. And then Emily chimed in and she said that she'd like recommendations for password sharing software that's secure and ideally cheap. And then Anne and Deanna had some similar comments. We had a big bot spam issue with our peer-to-peer fundraising platforms. There were over 700 fake pages created and flowed into our database as new accounts. And then similarly, crowdsource documents across hundreds of groups like Google Docs to create new resources. And how does this make us vulnerable in any way?
Okay. So I'm looking at the spam bot issue. So the fake pages, sorry, my guess is that one way to do that is you could, depending on how the page was set up or how the information was generated, a lot of the times they'll have click like verify I'm not a robot or something like that. So that can assist in mitigating some type of spam or generating. So it says I'm not a robot, and then it'll say it'll come up with the squares and it'll say click on the ones that have a street sign or something like that. So a lot of the times it's too complex for the spam or malware that's out there running, that they can't actually, they're not smart enough to figure out which box it is. So that's why it needs a human. So I'm not sure how their pages were set up. That should be one way that they can mitigate that in the future. The other thought is that I'm not sure how their process is, but maybe that they have, depending on how many requests they have, that somebody could actually manually do that before somebody requests the page. That they could say that they would want to set up a page, and they would have to verify that with Ann or somebody in her organization before that they're allowed to set up a page. So, and in the case if it's manual, then it would recommend using the I am not a robot option. So, so I'm reading the one from Diana, the crowdsourced documents. So because I'm more vulnerable. So I would say it depends on what extent the information is shared. It's in the case of, I would say public trust, like depending on how widespread, if it's somebody you're familiar with in the organization, or within that nonprofit sharing those email addresses. But going back to the conversation on phishing, like once your information's there and everybody has that information, that's, I know it's difficult now, everybody wants your email address, but depending on how that information could get leaked or available. So I hope that does answer your question. So.
And that one also went to Emily's question, recommendations for password sharing software that's secure and ideally cheap.
So without getting into specific vendors, and I don't know how the organization's set up, if you maybe would want to type it in there. But usually the best, if you're, first off, the best way would be not to share passwords. If you were going to share passwords, I would recommend, what they would recommend is something, they say out of band. So for example, if you email that person, hey, here's your login, and then you also email them, here's the password too, by the way. If somebody's listening to that communication, they could see the whole entire traffic, and then they could have access to that password as well. So if it's possible, call the person and say, hey, Diana, it's me, Trevor. I just wanted to give you the shared password. I know that's not scalable. That's just probably one example that they could use. The best way, actually, I would say, is if you could use, and I think we do recommend it, is what they call multi-factor authentication to log in. So you could, your banks probably have it set up where you log into your bank, you type in your actual email, or your username and login, and then your bank will actually text you your a second form, right? So they'll say you log in, you say my password's password 123, and then you'll get a text message from your bank saying, please enter this alphanumeric text, and then you would enter that in. So that's what's called two-factor or multi-factor authentication.
And so Anne wanted to know if texting would be a secure way to send passwords.
So that would be, I guess, another using a different channel. Yes, that would probably be a better of the options. I would say that probably would be better as long as your phone is secure. That you could, if you're going to email somebody the username, and then you could text them the password, like I said, or just call them. You could just call them and say, hey, here's the password. So any okay. I don't think just for now. Tim, do you want to do the working from home?
Sure. Yeah. And Trevor, how did I know your answer was going to be don't share passwords?
That's the easy answer.
Yes. I feel like that would probably be our recommendation, but that's if we have to.
But yes.
Yeah, we know. And that's kind of goes into this slide here too, is some of the cybersecurity recommendations can add an extra step to your day-to-day. And we're all very busy and we want to be as productive as possible. So some of these things might be looked at as, yeah, well, that's a little annoying, right? I don't want to get a text message with a code to have to put it in, but we promise that there's a reason why either your IT department or someone is telling you to take that extra step and make sure you're careful with sharing passwords. So this slide here, we just wanted to talk about some very simple recommendations you can take while working from home. And these may seem obvious, but this will get you a long way. And just be aware of it. And that's the important part here, is just have it in your mind, think about it, and be aware of these things, and it'll get you a long way, right? And so the first one, this change the default password, is most of us are all working on our home networks right now. My home network, whenever I'm on Zoom calls and my kids are jumping on our bounce house, it goes down and interrupts my calls, right? But as it just happened not too long ago. But there are risks with working on your home network, right? But we all have to do it right now. So one of the most important things you can do is just change the default password. So if your router comes from Comcast or Verizon or whomever installed the internet at your house, it comes with a default password on it. Just change that password, right? Make sure that password is changed, because those passwords can be hacked into. They are available for hackers, and it's just a good best practice to make sure that that's changed. As Trevor kind of already alluded to, but updating the software is very important. You're getting once again another part that I'm sure in your day-to-day is like, oh, I have to do a couple updates. My computer's taking forever to shut down. There's reasons why that's happening. Those are usually software updates, and there's usually security in those software updates. So make sure you're updating your operating system, updating the software when it tells you to update, and it's most importantly too your antivirus software, like Trevor mentioned. Make sure you're just updating it. So I log in to our company VPN once a day, just to make sure I get any updates that are being brought down from our corporate IT. Once every other day is probably fine to do as well. But just make sure you're getting those you're getting those Windows updates. You're getting those updates from your IT department. We talked a lot about phishing emails. I'll tell a quick story about this that might help you understand how good they can be. So back in November, when we were allowed to leave the house and fly on planes, I went to a partner conference for one of our security products that we use, and I'm in the airport on my way home. So my title obviously is director of sales in the title. So I am the one who is getting signed sales orders from customers, initiating conversations from customers, and working with the customers, right? So while I was in the airport, walking to my terminal, I got an email from someone I had not spoken to in maybe a year and a half saying, "See signed sales order." I look at it on my phone. I get very excited. I'm like, wow, I haven't talked to this guy in a year. I can't believe he finally signed. And then I'm thinking, wait a second. Sales is not that easy, number one. He's not just going to call and sign something, a year since I haven't talked to him. And this just doesn't make sense. I mean, why now? Why is he sending it? I haven't had any follow-up conversations with him. So as I open it up on my phone, which is a different view, I look a little closer, and he's sharing it from a Dropbox account. And that Dropbox account is a bunch of scrambled letters that I've never seen before. And it ended up being a phishing attempt, right? So whomever, maybe I'm giving them a little too much credit, but whomever sent that and what their plan there was potentially knew that I was flying and I was in an airport and I could potentially be pulling that email up on my phone, and knew that I was in sales and would be looking for sales orders. So they get very specific to what you do on a daily basis and where you are. So just make sure that you're aware of that and don't open the unknown attachments. Mobile devices, making sure that you're checking the application permissions. So mobile devices are an interesting world in security because a lot of folks out there are using their personal devices to access your organization's email or your organization's files, or maybe a website or an application that your organization wants you to download. So best practice here, if there are any IT folks on the phone, is probably want to look into a mobile device management solution. Like Trevor mentioned before, though, we don't specifically recommend one kind, but there are a couple of good ones out there. And all that does is make sure that that you're managing securely those mobile devices that are out in your environment and without intruding on their personal life. So it's essentially, making sure that if they do leave the organization, that you're able to wipe that device of your corporate data or organizational data without affecting their pictures and their personal apps and things like that. So there are a couple options on the mobile device side, but it's very important these days. We're all checking email on your phones and sending out emails from your phones and going on different applications as well. So be careful what you download. And then websites. This is it's very basic, but it's super important. Look for that little lock up in the URL. That little lock will at least let you know that you're going to a secure website. If you are an organization, you don't have the lock, make sure that you're doing the right things to your website to make sure that you have the security in place to secure your website as well. So, Trevor, I don't know if you have any other comments on this page. I'll turn it over to you for the next one, but if you had any other ones on this slide, feel free to chime in.
No, that's it. Thanks, Tim.
Okay.
The thing was, like we had said earlier, is just checking in the case of the phishing example or attacks is actually checking even before you click. In the case of an email, just hover your mouse over that actual URL. So it may say www.microsoft.com, but it's actually not really going to go there. So that would be one of my recommendations. The other thing is, if you're really still concerned about it and it still doesn't look right, is you can actually copy that URL and then just go to Google or any search engine and you can actually just type like you verify URL or something like that, check URL, Virus Total. There's some other websites out there. Is you can actually plug that in and it'll say like, yes, this is a safe website to go to. So kind of like a pre-check essentially. So so we're going to talk about the other two topics that specific to nonprofits, and as everybody's working from home now and using a lot of collaboration platforms as we are right now. So it's just protecting your account. So I know it's possible in organizations to share that account. It could be possible, but still that's it's a service. It's like a regular software that somebody pays for. So protecting that account, that username and login, so it's specific to you and not anybody else. So so the other couple things here, the disable join before host. So that basically will assist the host in making sure that they're in the room first, right? Just like a physical room, right? So if you're going to be the one presenting in a room, you want to be the one that gets to the room before everybody else, and you can make sure that this is your room and you're comfortable in here, and everything is safe and as secure, as virtually secure as possible. So you can make sure that you have the everything set up, and then you can allow everybody to come into the room, which is enabling the waiting room. So like we talked about, is making sure that people that are, if you have the registration set up, make sure that people are registered. Make sure that, if you can, it's possible to just kind of verify who they are, who they say they are, and they, that they're, I don't want to say authorized, but make sure that, that they are who they should be before they get in. Now, again, depending on the case of nonprofits, I know that can be sometimes tricky. So the other thing is, as we talked about before, is just updating the software, right? So as Tim mentioned about updating, I'm sure is for the Windows people, yesterday, Microsoft, every Tuesday or second Tuesday of the month is Patch Tuesday. So they release a whole lot of patches. So it's continuing to update the software, especially the collaboration platforms, or some of them are really making some good steps in updating that software. So, so and it's a little technical, but disabling file transfer. So what file transfer is so we're all in the room right now, and everybody, a file transfer is somebody can basically bring a file into that and place it into the group. So what happens is or could theoretically happen and possibly happen is you're in a group and everybody thinks they're trusted, but they actually could bring an affected virus, a file that's infected into the platform, and they just say, oh, well, it's Tim, I know Tim, and you click on the file and the computer gets infected. So that's why that's recommended. So again, everybody's business is business situation, business risks are different, but these are just kind of some recommendations and best practices. So if you could go, yes. So I see your question, Diana. Is that like uploading files? Yes. So again, depends on the organization. So, so I know this was a question earlier. Cybersecurity risk for online fundraising. So a couple things. These are just kind of some best practices in doing some research and prepping for this. There's a lot of platforms out there to do it. I'm sure some are bigger than others, and everybody probably has their favorites. But actually, just kind of understanding the platform, like where's the organization? Just kind of doing your due diligence, like where's the company out of? Do they have, are they a trusted advisor? Can I trust them with my data? And just kind of looking at that from that risk perspective, or maybe just asking other nonprofit organizations, hey, who do you use for your fundraising platform? Like, do you have any recommendations? And they say, yes, we use this. And well, why do you use that? Are they secure? Are you happy with them? The other thing is, if you're switching to anyone, see what kind of reports are out there, see if there's any information on them available, see if anybody's done any open source reviews on them. So yeah, the access to the data, that's the other thing that we had talked about earlier. And the rest, a lot of it really just focuses on the data. The other thing is, and I talked about earlier, the multi-factor identification of the platform. So take a scenario of a nonprofit organization switches to a new platform. They get an email saying, hey, we've created your account. Please click this link. And it really isn't from that platform, and you click the link and you think you're going to ABC fundraising platform. It says, please enter your password. You enter your password, and then, oh, wow, it didn't work or something strange. Okay, well, whatever. But then now you close out the email, you go back to abc.com for your fundraising platform, and you enter the same password. But what happened was you got phished before. You entered that same password to the malicious attacker, and it's the same password that you're using. So now they actually have access to your whole entire platform, as well as you still maintain access. So one way to assist in mitigating that is, like we talked about, the stopping the phishing and stuff, phishing attacks, but also using multi-factor authentication if the platform allows it. So what that means is you log into the platform, and then what would happen is ABC fundraising platform would actually send you a text message or a phone call, however you want to configure that, with a secondary authentication method. So only you will get the secondary authentication method. So it says, enter your password. The phone call that says your additional password is 123. So while you're logging in, you enter 123, and now you have access. But in the case of a malicious attacker, they would enter the password and it would ask them for that second form of identification or authorization. Well, they don't have your phone number. They don't have your cell phone. So they shouldn't be able to get in. So that's kind of the advantage of using multi-factor authentication. So.
Yeah, one thing I'll just chime in there real quick too, Trevor, to the
Yes.
question earlier about password sharing and ideally a cheap option. Multi-factor is, please correct me if I'm wrong, Trevor, but it's normally included in like Google, Microsoft, whatever platform that you're using. Typically, it's a matter of just turning it on. So it's
Yeah.
definitely an affordable option to do multi-factor authentication.
Yes, yes, yes. Especially on, high value accounts, to your point, Tim. And that was something, if you're looking at different platforms, that would be something, you could investigate. Do you have multi-factor authentication? And, how is it set up? What forms you use? So, the only other thing is, like I said, I would want to touch on is just retaining, how does, your donor information, is that encrypted, right? Is that does that maintain, to Tim's point about the confidentiality, integrity, and availability? Is that information actually encrypted? How is the storage, the fundraising platform, how are they securing your donor information? The next question is, when they transfer the funds, or I go to make a donation, what is the process? Are there any potential weaknesses in transferring the money to our nonprofit? So, because a lot of that information is, obviously that donor information, that data information that Tim talked about, is extremely sensitive, extremely valuable, and that's what attackers would be looking for. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Trevor. If there were any other questions on the online fundraising or auction platforms, feel free to ask. So we did want to stop here as well and have ask a quick question. What cybersecurity areas does your organization look to improve or enhance? And so while we're waiting for any any questions here, Trevor, why don't I throw that question to you and say what would be some simple ways an organization could enhance their cybersecurity?
So actually, Tim, if you could go to the next slide, I think it is. We have some resources there.
Absolutely.
That will just give kind of everybody an idea. So I doing some research, and when we were putting this slide together, so there's the Federal Trade Commission from the government. They actually have, for small businesses, some cybersecurity resources in there. Not everybody has a huge budget for cybersecurity. Definitely understand that. But the FTC, they have some good resources there. They have some free assessments, I think it is. So maybe give everybody a better understanding of where their current state is, or any holes or something like that. I think they have some posters and some educational awareness there for your employees. So that's available. The National Council of Nonprofits, they actually have some information specific, as it says in the link there, tools and resources. And then the other option is for the maybe larger nonprofits is the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. So they actually have some more advanced threat information and stuff like that. So really depending on your current maturity of where you're at, your size, three great resources there. So
yeah. No, it's a great point, and we will be sending the deck out after the call too. So you'll get these these links after the webinar. These are very good, and they're very simple to comprehend and understand too. You don't have to be a cyber expert when going to these websites to click on it and kind of and comb through some of the information that they have.
And Tim and Trevor, I'm curious, what would be good first steps to take if you do end up getting hacked or breached?
So I guess the first thing would be to find out is, first off, like, how did you find out that happened? Was it that, a donor said, oh, my Social Security was released? And then, like, in that situation, well, I'll use that example that somebody's, and it's, I'm sure we've probably been involved with some organization where our information got out. And depending on, is finding out how that happened, right? Like, was it a phishing attack, right? Like, okay, so what we got phished, but what really happened, right? So there's a lot of, I don't want to say what ifs, but there's a lot of possibilities, right? So in the case of a phishing attack, like, so they clicked on a link, their computer seems fine, or they went to a website and they went to a fake website. They entered a password, right? So maybe they just need to change their user password, right? If their computer still appears to be running fine, and it's, maybe they don't just need to change their password, or if it's something more severe, maybe they need to actually go back to the original installation, what they call image of that computer. So I know that didn't answer your question, Colleen, but I know there's a lot of different scenarios.
So Trevor, along those same lines, I'll keep that one going. Who should be their first call if they're not a technical person? Who can they reach out to help kind of dig into some of that information?
So I guess my first thought would be, how are they managing their IT, and what is their general procurement process? Do they have somebody? Do they have a service provider that's volunteering their services? And I would say that one of the main things to do would just be to document that, right? To find out, like, so if you're the person who's responding to that incident, you may spend a lot of time just getting to figure out what happened, where if you could just talk to the user right away and you say, well, what did you do? And they say, well, I got this email and then I clicked on it and then it took me to this strange site and that's it, save the incident responder a lot of time, right? Because if you just hand somebody a computer and you say, we don't know what happened, but it's actually strange, like, the amount of time it's going to take to understand that is enormous, and time can be of the essence. So if you tell the person, like, document that they say, well, I got this email at 12:54, and it said it was coming from John Smith, and I clicked on the link, and then it took me to this really strange website, and then that was it. We'll save the incident responder so much time, because they can say, okay, let's go back. If this is the next day when they're available, they can go back and they can look at that email from 12:54, and they can say, okay, like, where's the email? And they can look at it and they can do more of their incident response process.
Perfect. Okay.
So I do see there's a question. It says, we use an IT services company who handles most of our technology and security. What are some questions we can ask them to ensure we are secure? So I would think, April, is just kind of have them maybe sit down and just ask them, just say, what are you guys doing for us from a security standpoint? We really appreciate your service. We're just trying to understand, what we do from a security standpoint, or what we could do. And I understand everybody's time is valuable. What we could do to help us stop cybersecurity attacks, like, can we turn on multi-factor authentication when we're working remotely? Do we encrypt our data? That's our backup donor data. Is that encrypted? They could say, well, yes or no. Can we do it? Is there a cost, or is this included in our services that we're providing? So. I don't know if there was any other questions.
Yeah, if anyone else has any other questions, we have just a few more minutes wrapping up here. And as Tim mentioned, we will have this recording of the webinar and the slides available on the River Network website.
Awesome.
All right, so if there's no more questions, I just want to say thank you so much to Tim and Trevor. This was really, really informative and helpful, especially at a time when we're all working from home and all, trying to go virtual. So we really appreciate your time and all the information that you provided. And for everyone listening, thank you so much for joining us for River Network's roundtable discussions. Coming up next week, we have our virtual River Rally. It's starting on May 18th. And we have 3 weeks worth of presentations and workshops and live events and social networking events So if you want more information on that, you can head to rivernetwork.org. And one last thing, I am posting a survey to the chat right now, and we would appreciate if you folks could take just a few minutes to fill out the survey to let us know how we did today. And any and all feedback is welcomed and appreciated. And thank you once again, and I hope you have a wonderful day.